The coronavirus stimulus package is being negotiated by the Senate. It includes a provision to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think that is way overdue. I think we should have had a $15 minimum wage for a long time. But hey, you know what? Great. If it gets through budget reconciliation in its current form, okay, good. $15 minimum wage by 2025. Again, it's not exactly where I want it to be or where it actually needs to be, but right now, any improvement is desperately needed. So now, that said, we have an evenly divided Senate, 50-50, with, of course, Kamala Harris, vice president, who is the tiebreaker. That involves, of course, having to get all Democrats on board, or else you're not getting anything through that Senate. So now, unfortunately, it doesn't have support of all the Democrats. You have Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, as I reported recently, has floated an increase of the minimum wage to about $11 an hour. You have Mitt Romney, of course, who is Mitt Romney and Tom Cotton, who have floated an increase of the minimum wage of $10 an hour. So that's the Republican counter proposal. So, pretty far away. You've got the centrist Democrats that are like, no. $11 an hour, nowhere near enough, as I mentioned. And then it barely even better than the Republicans. So now there is another proposal out here from a Republican senator. This is Senator Josh Hawley. This is somebody that's supposed to be a populist, the right-wing populist, right? So I'm in tune with the working class, he says. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce my own piece of legislation, my own proposal to raise the minimum wage. All right, well, let's look at it, right? So what is different about this one? Well, instead of actually asking employers to pay more, as every other minimum wage proposal is basically it. That's the way we've done it for quite some time. We mandate a minimum wage that employers are forced to comply with. His plan, Hawley's plan, is to actually get the government to subsidize those wages. Interesting. So now he's calling this the blue collar bonus, and I'm going to share some of the details here. So this is according to reports from Axios. Quote, Hawley's proposing a 3-year program. So again, this only lasts 3 years. After the 3 years, they would have to reauthorize the program, which would increase worker wages starting in 2021. Those making below $16.50 an hour would receive a refundable tax credit worth 50% of the difference paid out in quarterly installments. The $16.50 could increase over time as it would be tied to the consumer price index. But of course, you would have to continuously re-up the program every 3 years. Now, the credit would only apply to 40 hours or less of weekly work. So if you have 2 jobs, if you work more than 40 hours to get by, you're kind of SOL on that. And if you're an immigrant, by the way, who doesn't have a valid social security number, well, you're also screwed. So you don't get that. Oh, all right. In fact, only Americans with valid social security numbers would be eligible, meaning non-U.S. citizens and undocumented immigrants who do pay taxes, who do work, they will end up getting paid low wages. So they would be excluded from this. Now, here's the thing. I don't actually think that this would increase employment for undocumented immigrants at all, because the company wouldn't be paying for any sort of wage increase. This is a subsidy to allow corporations to continue paying their current wages. And that's it. As a result, since it is a government program, a government subsidy, it's going to cost about $200 billion. That, of course, has Republicans immediately saying no to that. So this plan kind of sucks. It's just more corporate welfare. Why not just raise the minimum wage to first $15 an hour and then continue to go up? Now, that said, to be fair, Hawley did tell Axios that he would support a $15 minimum wage for workers of large corporations that would generate at least $1 billion in annual income. Annual revenue. Okay. Hey, at least that's something, right? To be fair. Now, Hawley, as I said, is championing this as a very working class idea. Here's what he said, quote, "The bill is targeting folks who are making $34,000 to $35,000 a year and less. This is targeted towards people who have been the hardest hit, who are trying to get back on their feet. In reality, 34 to 35, no, it's actually the people making $18,000 who are the worst off." That said, here's what he said, quote, "Federal policy has helped create over the last 30 to 40 years flatlined wages for blue-collar workers. We need to have a broader discussion about a number of these policy choices. A lot of it has to do with our trade policy and the policies that we pursued with globalization that have been very bad choices." So let me just stop there, right? It's not the federal government that's the problem, all right? It's corporate greed. And you could say, well, look, yes, the corporations have bought the government that have prevented wage increases and, and in some bad trade decisions that have prioritized corporations over anything else, or have allowed these corporations to go and exploit other countries, or I should say workers in some of these other countries like Bangladesh and India and places like that, China. But here's the thing, okay? It's not the federal government. It's the corporations. What this bill does is subsidizes corporations. You're going to give corporations more money, or not more money, but you're going to essentially subsidize corporations to continue paying starvation wages. And you're taking money from the middle class and just giving it to people. Through this program. You're not actually going after the root of the problem, which is corporations not paying people enough to survive. So it is a transfer of wealth, again, from the middle class to the working class, which it should actually be coming from these corporations, from wealthy business owners and the rich. Okay, so you understand why the problem, where the problem is here? Okay. It's kind of the opposite of a populist piece of legislation. In fact, again, we're dealing with refundable tax credits, which can be complicated to figure out. In fact, nobody's going to really know how much they're actually going to take home from this entire thing. Not only that, but it will also disproportionately benefit those in states that have kept their state minimum wages low. Basically, rewarding Republican states for not passing higher minimum wages and not really benefiting states that have taken it upon themselves, blue states mainly, to raise their wages. And so that's another issue, okay? Seattle, LA, New York, bigger cities and states that decided to actually listen to the activists and raise their wages, they're going to see no benefit. Where states like Alabama, West Virginia, or Kentucky, they're going to get more corporate welfare, essentially. Not only that, but the bill itself, as I mentioned, helps to perpetuate class warfare between the middle and working classes. Again, you're going to tell a middle class person, essentially, and this will be the messaging, that, oh, hey, man, look, what you're doing, you're paying more in taxes so that this person working at McDonald's can make more money from refundable tax credits. And now they're not going to say that. They're just going to be like, they're taking money out of your pocket and they're paying people at McDonald's. That's what we're doing. Well, no, that's a problem. All right. They're basically going to blame the workers. They're going to fight amongst each other themselves. And the corporations, again, are going to continue to make more and more money. They're going to save money because they don't actually have to pay more wages. That's a problem. The corporations are going to benefit most from this. This is, again, corporate welfare wrapped up in fake populism. This is what I keep saying. Right-wing populism isn't actually populism. And again, it goes after blue states, and it goes after and tries to exclude immigrants who actually end up paying a lot more in taxes than we normally ascribe to them. They pay taxes. They don't see anything back from those taxes. And so this is a problem. Okay, this is a disaster. This is sad. It's a mess. What we need to do is we just need to raise wages for everybody. We need to raise the wages, we need to tie them to inflation. We need to institute single-payer healthcare. Now, what does that have to do with this? Well, think about it this way, right? One of the number one complaints from corporations is about the cost of healthcare. Big companies, right? Big companies, small companies, providing healthcare to their employees. That is a gigantic expense. If you were to allow the government to take over, not to subsidize, but to take over insurance and eliminate private insurance or vastly reduce their role, and you no longer will have these companies have to provide insurance to their employees, that frees up a bunch of money to where, guess what? They can now afford to pay their workers a higher wage, which of course would be mandated by raising the minimum wage. See how that works out? Smart, right? Close down tax loopholes and offshore tax havens. We should also absolutely do that. Of course. Just a couple of suggestions here, but again, this proposition, the proposal, is a complicated disaster. It's just easier to raise wages, and it's better. So now, not only that, as I keep mentioning, this expires in 3 years, which just happens to be 2024, where, we're going to have a primary, and Josh Hawley is expected to jump in. So kind of fits perfectly into his political plans, to where he can then say, well, look, I helped raise people's wages. I came up with an idea to help raise people's wages without actually getting into the details of how this is just nothing more than a corporate giveaway. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.